Okay, how many of you would be interested in giving a technical cybersecurity course in less time, in an efficient way, so that students can enjoy a better learning experience, at the same time you save some time for yourself? Does it sound interesting to you? One guy in the back, thank you. Obviously this is the technical part, maybe all other learning related sessions are in the first, so hope you will find it enjoyable. Quick introduction. We studied the popularity of active learning methods. We know that it's growing, it's important, and it also includes and affects our domain as well. But what about traditional lecture-based methods? Obviously, we give courses, we give lectures to our students, and they come, and there are theoretical parts and practical parts. So that's why we have studied how well a lecture-based approach suits for teaching a highly technical cybersecurity course. How can we solve this problem, and what are the efficiency-related questions we can come up with? So the cyber defense monitoring course that we have, the efficiency of teaching this complex to get together with this active learning methods, because obviously we use different online teaching and online learning methods. And also, should the course continue with blended learning teaching methodology, which includes both classroom lectures and at the same time practical sessions and some e-learning, online learning elements, and also the opinions of students on course quality, cheating, plagiarism, and ease of use, etc. So this is what we have done, the method. We have measured the long-term knowledge retention of our past students between 2011 and 2017, so roughly around 200 students. And there was a survey with 2 rounds, and we also had an interview afterwards. And our aim ultimately was to measure the content quality of the course, the efficiency against fairness, cheating, and plagiarism. So before going into the details of this approach, let's quickly remind the learning method, learning objectives, Bloom's taxonomy on the left, and then the newer version, Anderson's taxonomy, is on the right. So obviously we start with the remembering and understanding apply up until create, so that the students have the kind of ultimate knowledge, skills, and maybe abilities, and then maybe even habits on top of that. Obviously, we also have different learning phases, okay, according to David Merrill, starting with the problem, engaging in solving real-world problems, and then activation, demonstration, application, and finally, integration of the new knowledge into the learner's world. Let's talk about the course structure a bit so that you can also understand what we taught. We started with introduction to concepts of event logging, syslog protocol, rsyslog, software suite, and then links to NetFilter firewall, some regular expressions using different tools, frameworks like Swatch, and also advanced event logging with syslog-ng, and we also used simple event correlator, advanced event correlation with SEC, and then finally intrusion detection and prevention with SNOT. So starting with the basics, students learned a lot. And that information is also very applicable, very useful in the real world. So we were wondering if our approach was good enough to help them prepare for the real world, and how efficient are we doing this? So that was the objective of our case study here. Survey details, 3 parts basically. The first one was a test of 12 questions with multiple choice answers to measure the current knowledge. So it was like an exam coming from 5 years ago. So luckily all the students responded. Some of them I'll share the details. And then in part 2, we continued with a questionnaire of 20 questions about the course quality, evaluation, and also ideas for improving the course, really. And then based on the responses, we also invited them over and then had an interview, asked questions about how did they like the course, what are the areas that we can improve, etc. And let's take a look at the analysis of the student feedback. This is the participation data starting from 2011 up until 2017, the number of students who took the course on the left, and then a number of students who took part in the survey responded to us. You see the participation rate is around like 25–30% on average, which I would say pretty good enough. And then number of students with grade A, B, C, D, E, as you can see here in the participant data. And also test results for all respondents. I'm talking about the first part, which we asked technical questions and how well do they remember. Obviously there are different variations. Some of them are actually doing the very same thing that we taught. So obviously, they could answer the questions fairly easily, but at the same time, some of them are doing totally irrelevant things. But when we look at the numbers, one of the students who responded to our survey responded all the questions correctly, and also 5, 11, 8, as you can see, the numbers in the second column, I would say it makes a lot of sense because it's like a very normal distribution we see here. And when it comes to evaluation fairness, we also wanted to learn this because there's a lot of questions about if we turn into this online learning, active learning methods, what happens? Can students maybe cheat easily? What about plagiarism, etc.? So that's what we asked. Whether they were happy or deserved a better, higher, or maybe lower grade. Most of them responded like they were happy or they deserved what they got. So that's a kind of anchor point. But also, we asked different questions about plagiarism and cheating. So for example, I think it is important that the university fights plagiarism, or the second one, when doing the homework, I personally witnessed the case, etc. But I'd like to point your attention to the final question here. Because conducting exam on computers with internet connection makes cheating easier. Do you agree with this or not agree with this? And 25 individuals responded to questions with either agree or mostly agree, whereas 9 of them would disagree or mostly disagree. So the inclination towards like they agree with the situation, which is another point to discuss about how can we implement this. So here's some different suggestions for improving the course. Labs should contain additional graded assignments was one of them, so that students can enjoy the learning process. Interaction with students should be increased for most of the complex topics, and I think this is pretty important for the active learning phase, because we observed, and also they told us, that they wanted to have different opportunities to refresh what they have learned and come back and study again, which obviously in a regular traditional classroom setting, it's not possible. So that's why for most complex topics, they wanted to have at least like 5-10 minute videos with quizzes so that they can apply this, they can refresh, and maybe before the quizzes, before the final exam, they can use this. Traditional lectures are needed for instant feedback and personal interaction, and I think that's pretty important for all maybe e-learning or active learning studies. Why? Because they can watch courses. There are different videos they can learn from anywhere. But when it comes to interaction, that's the tricky part. So that's why they needed the classroom sessions and personal interactions as well with the instructor, with the lab assistants. And also the course should contain live demos from production systems, so they can have the opportunity to play with the actual data. So that's why, based on the suggestions and the study, we have planned and already started implementing and improving our course and how we deliver the secret monitoring course. With more interactive quizzes and live online during classroom, otherwise it's like instructors speaking all the time, they are passive listening, and it kind of gets boring and maybe they lose their focus, etc. So that was our first point. And the second one was including coming up with 5 to 10 minute e-learning modules for the most complex topics, so it will be a good refresher for them to come back and study on their own. And finally, preparing an interactive, easy to use e-learning platform, and that's about usability, that's about user experience and interfaces. So finally, implementation, what we have done, we have used different tools like Camtasia, Final Cut Pro, QuickTime, with talking head video recordings, with webcams and dedicated cameras, and also using a more flexible, advanced LMS method. So this is a screenshot from what we use nowadays, so that they can follow the courses fairly easily, and also coming up with the quizzes so that they can instantly solve during the live lectures as well. So in our final slide conclusion, in this case study, we investigated the efficiency of current teaching methods for a technical cybersecurity course, and also focused on evaluation, fairness, student satisfaction, as well as course design with feedbacks collected from students. So we have already started redesigning the future iterations this way. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy.
Well, I've been involved a little bit in security, teaching security, and also we created some sort of simulation for cybersecurity awareness. So they use,
is it like technical or?
It's a bit more for information management. So so to be more aware of what are the threats with cybersecurity. But one of the things that we added in every single course that we talk about security is ethics. Because I mean, you can't just put a weapon in a child right now with this information. How do you address the problem?
That's pretty important. And for this specific context, I would say accessing to those learning platforms, we call it LMS or maybe different platforms, should be obviously with different authentication mechanisms. Also because of the plagiarism and also getting grades, etc. But at the same time, when you look at different videos online, you can fairly easily learn lots of hacking and real-life hacking tools, techniques, methodologies. So that's, I think the question has two different angles, and that's a very valid question. Thanks for asking. One is from the traditional learning methods and how we grade our students, how we deliver our courses, and how they learn better. But at the same time, from a practical point of view, when we teach cybersecurity, information security, obviously the things that we discuss could have catastrophic effects if not handled with good ways and ethics wise. Do we have time? Yes, please.
Are you suggesting a general framework for every instructor and every cybersecurity course? Because this is really depending, in my opinion, to instructors should have some flexibility. A lot of phrases we have, we should do that, we should do that, we should do that.
Of course.
I mean, you can't dictate to your colleagues what to do, can you?
Of course, no. This is particularly for this context and this cybersecurity monitoring course. Obviously, it's not like this is the new way, etc. But based on the suggestions that we received, and especially based on the data that we collected from our students, that depends, for example, the region, because we know that Estonia is a very digital country. The students are really, they like to use computers, and also climate issues as well, instructor, etc. Because some instructors prefer not to give it. But I would say, if that's the case, the end result might not be, good enough comparing to what they can learn nowadays, because they know that, for example, the best universities in the world, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, whatever, all those courses are publicly available online. So if they have an opportunity to learn the same thing from somewhere else, maybe they prefer to do so. So in my opinion, I think at least we can consider finding a way to integrate so that both they can enjoy and we can also grade them and also give them the diploma at the end, but the industry, the demand is changing in my understanding. So obviously I didn't mean that everyone needs to use it, so that's not the point.
Even so, we're running out of time. I cannot resist to ask one question.
Of course, thank you.
my president is kind of pushing very hard for us to do online teaching.
No surprise. There's a lot of demand.
This is always you do that. But the type of learning here, is it available? Can we have access to that information, or is it just for your
About how to design this
the
environment?
work you're presenting, or how open are you as far as us learning from what you're doing?
We are perfectly open, 100%. In fact, that's precisely my PhD topic, which I'm in the final phase, how to design this active learning and e-learning methods in a more effective way, so that colleagues, instructors, universities all around the world can implement this, so that they can save a lot of money, save a lot of time, because unfortunately this is the case where commercial tools and software are in place and they're expensive, so we're trying to kind of improve the scientific knowledge behind it as well. I know there's a lot of them.
Thank you very much.